On February 26 of 2016, Katie Rogers, now known as Katie Proudfoot, files for divorce from Seth Rogers. In August of 2016, Katie files for a restraining order against Seth on behalf of her and Sebastian.
Since returning from deployment in December, I have witnessed a multitude of events from Seth. I have seen him hit Sebastian in the head, neck, and back. I have witnessed him, when taking his anger on Sebastian, grab him with both hands, lift his entire body up and slam him down, then proceed to beat him. He has on many cases whipped him with a belt, not paying attention to where he was hitting because he was so angry. My neighbor informs me that during my duty days, they have seen Sebastian on multiple occasions coming outside the house crying and looking for his dad because he had been gone for long periods of time and didn't know where he was. They told me they have told my son to go inside and lock the door when this occurred. Seth will on a regular basis just walk into the living room and get naked, not caring that Sebastian is in the area and sees this. On several occasions when Sebastian expressed stress or anxiety over our separation or his daddy's anger, he would respond by telling Sebastian that this is all because mommy doesn't want to love daddy anymore. By the second week of school, the teachers had already requested that the principal be present anytime that Seth were there due to him making them uncomfortable. When he went to the school to meet his teachers before the school year had started, we had just finished explaining about Sebastian's diagnosis and about the fluid on his brain, and he did something to irritate his father, who then responded by hitting him in the head in front of his teacher. And when I addressed him about it and told him he cannot do that and cannot keep doing that because it is wrong, he told me it wasn't that hard and he is fine. And people need to stop telling him how to raise his son. I found out when I took the restraining order to the school that they had contacted CPS, Child Protective Services, 1 week prior. The social worker and myself had seen behaviors from my son, such as waking up screaming and kicking in the middle of the night with terrors, fear of making a mistake for fear that daddy will beat him. He had an accident at school where he wet his pants and was terrified that daddy would find out. He is displaying aggressive behaviors that mirror what his father says and does. I've reached out to the doctor and requested assistance with therapy for PTSD in light of the child abuse and to help my son recover from this. I have spoken to his doctor and a referral is in place for therapy to start as soon as possible to help him with this transition and to cope and recover from the trauma that he has been through. Seth has been monitoring all of my phone calls and not allowing me to speak with anyone, including my family, without listening. And he has been monitoring every text and call that I make to patronize me and keep me from telling people exactly what has been going on, hovering over every call that I make. On 6/5/2016, Seth was very angry and belligerent. He stormed out of the house and got into the Chevy Cruze and peeled tires out of the parking lot. Approximately 30 minutes give or take later, he came back pulling in crooked and fast, jumped out of the car and ran in home, looking for his gun, stating that he was going to kill that blank. My neighbor was over at the time and took recording of him during this time. I responded that if he took his gun and tried to kill someone, he would wind up in jail, that he could not do that. My neighbor went outside with him and spoke to him where he stated that someone followed him and threw a soda at the car. Soda was all over the outside and inside of the car, and pulled him out of the car through the driver's side window and punched him in the face. He said he did nothing to revoke this and refused to make police report after being repeatedly advised to call the police and make an incident report. He did not have markings but exaggerated his limp for approximately 5 minutes before walking normal again. I have also received multiple complaints at various times throughout the past 4 to 6 months from neighbors that he makes them feel uncomfortable because he is standing out front confronting everyone when they come home or watching them. My neighboring unit is in the process of adopting and they have persons come to their house on a regular basis. I called Seth approximately 1 month ago confronting a gentleman because he parked in his spot and telling him he doesn't care who the F he is and that if he does it again he'll take action to have his car towed or beat his ass. This was to a social worker there to check their home and he knew it. Attached are pictures of our son with marks left by respondent. I certify under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct.
Now we are going to read Seth Rogers' response to the allegations.
I, Seth Rogers, declare that I am the respondent in the above captioned matter and have personal knowledge of each fact set forth in this declaration. If called as a witness, I could and would competently testify within the bounds hereto. Petitioner Katie L. Rogers, hereinafter referred to as Katie, and I were married on June 21, 2008 and still reside together. We have been married for 8 years and 3 months. We have 1 child together, Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers, hereinafter referred to as Sebastian, born December 7, 2008. On or about August 29th of 2016, Katie obtained a temporary restraining order against me and had me removed from our marital residence. She listed Sebastian as a protected party and obtained a child custody order through the TRO, forbidding me to see him. There is a permanent domestic violence restraining order here and set for September 16, 2016 before this court. Says being served, I have not violated and have no impermissible contact with either petitioner or our son. On August 29, 2016 and September 8, 2016, I turned in the firearms I was in legal possession of to the San Diego County Sheriff's Office. I have abided by the terms of the DVRO even though Katie's actions rendered me homeless. Kay's request for a restraining order is based upon the following. I was highly aggressive in my mannerism and I cursing out at her, not a basis for a restraining order under the facts. I was very angry, yelling at our son, and our son said, "Daddy hit me," not a basis for a restraining order under the facts as I never hit him. I've yelled at her and our son and slammed the door, breaking it, basis for a restraining order under the facts. Generic allegations of temper issues, false and not a basis for a restraining order even if true. Generic allegations of drug usage, false and, in of itself, not a basis for a restraining order, even if true. As a result of these baseless allegations, I respectfully request the court deny Katie's request for a permanent RO in full. There is no basis for her claims, and she fails to provide conduct under the Domestic Violence Prevention Act that would justify a restraining order. In a request for the DVRO, Katie claims that on August 28, 2016, I was being highly aggressive in my mannerisms and verbally watching her in her sleep, and I yelled at her because she is not willing to beat our son. That is not true, and even if it was true, I would not be a basis for a DVRO. What actually happened on this day is that I was having a difficult time with our son. He refused to do anything I asked of him. I asked him to clean his room, and he replied no, and that he didn't have to listen to me or do anything I asked him to do, and he told me I should apologize for asking him to clean his room. I attempted to appropriately discipline him by sternly telling him that under no circumstances should he ever speak to any adult, let alone his mother or father, the way he spoke to me. After this, Sebastian ran downstairs to Katie, jumped in her lap, and started saying he hated me, and that he wished I would leave and never come back. After Sebastian seemed to calm down a bit, Katie got up from the chair she was in and walked outside, and Sebastian approached me and told me he loved me and wanted to live with me after all. After this incident, I was very upset, but I was never violent anyway. Our neighbor was in the house, and she said something about being uncomfortable. I told our neighbor I was going to get some coffee and go outside to be alone. When I did, our neighbor followed me outside and asked me what was wrong. I told her I was feeling and asked her to just let me go calm down and compose myself. At no point did I act violently toward her or anyone else in the house, and I never yelled at Katie because she wouldn't beat our son. There was never any violence, nor was there ever any threat of violence. In her request for a DVRO, Katie claims that on August 22nd, I was being belligerent and yelling at her and our son. That is not true, and even if it was, it would not be the basis for a DVRO. What actually happened on this day was that Katie and I were arguing about how we were going to proceed with our divorce. Our divorce had been filed and we were still residing in the same house, which created a tense situation. Although we argued, I never once acted violently, and never once did I encourage her to beat our son, as she alleges in her pleadings. During our argument, I left the residence and slammed the door, but her claims I broke the door is false. The door was already broken before I slammed it. Again, there was never any violence, nor was there any threat of violence. In a request for a DVRO, Katie claims that on August 11, 2016, I was angry at our son and that our son told her that I hit him. The truth is I never put a hand on our son. Our son suffers from a rare condition called 6q27 chromosome deletion syndrome. Among the symptoms he suffers from are incidents of acting out, where he hits and bites himself out of frustration. He has been known to throw himself to the ground during these incidents. This is a very common thing for him, and others have witnessed him doing this. I have filed herewith declaration from some of these witnesses. On August 11, 2016, Sebastian suffered from an episode in which he hurt himself out of frustration. I told him that day that if he cleaned his room, he could go swimming. I asked if his room was clean, and he replied that it wasn't. I told him he couldn't go swimming until it was clean. Sebastian acted by flying into rage, screaming and hitting himself, biting himself, and trying to throw himself on the floor. I reached out to catch him before his head hit the door frame. At no time did I ever hit him or display any violent actions to him at all. It should be noted that Katie never called the police, and Katie never took Sebastian for any medical care as a result of this alleged incident. Katie never took any action whatsoever consistent with a parent whose child had been abused. Katie's allegations that I abused Sebastian anyway is completely false. Katie's generic allegations of temper and drug issues. In a request for a DVRO, Katie claims that I yell and scream at her with balled fists and make a vague allegation that I do drugs. These are both untrue. As set forth above, we do argue because we are going through a divorce and live in the same house. Of course, things are stressful. However, I never ball my fist at her, and I've never acted violently towards her. The only drugs I've ever consumed are my medications as prescribed by my doctor. I'm currently suffering from 9 herniated discs in my back, a torn meniscus in my left knee, 3 tears in my right shoulder. I attend physical therapy as a result of these injuries. It saddens me that Katie uses my injuries and resultant prescriptions for medication as ammunition for her vague accusation that I do drugs. Furthermore, I find ridiculous that Katie alleges she is in fear of me. Even if I was acting violently, which I was not, I would not be able to physically harm her due to my injuries. While I'm in great physical pain, Katie, by contrast, not only physically healthy, but as she is in the Navy as part of our shipboard security force, she has received training in physical combat techniques. She has no fear of me. I find disheartening that Katie alleges Sebastian has anything to fear from me. I've always been Sebastian's primary caregiver. As Katie is in the Navy and is stationed on board a ship, she works and is often employed while I act as a stay-at-home dad. I care for Sebastian's day-to-day needs, and this is a continuous task given his special needs due to his conditions. I love it and I embrace it, even though it can be troubling at times. Sebastian and I have built a special bond due to the fact that I'm always home with him to take care of him. He has no reason to fear me. I believe Katie only filed this request for a DVRO to gain a tactical advantage in our divorce and to get me kicked out of our marital residence. As stated above, our living situation was quite stressful as we were going through the divorce process while living together. However, I believe Katie knew she could not remove me from the home without staging a domestic violence incident. This was totally unnecessary as I know that we cannot live together any longer and I'm willing to move out without a court order to do so. As I know that she doesn't want me to have equal custody of Sebastian, so DVRO is also an attempt to ensure that I do not see our son. Katie requests that the court order me to pay her attorney fees, but this is simply not possible. There is a vast discrepancy in income in this case. I've not worked in some time, as I've been a stay-at-home dad. Katie is an E5 in the Navy and earns substantial base pay and allowances, as reflected in her leave and earnings statement, sharing significantly more than I do, as reflected in our income and expense declarations. For that reason, and for the reason that Katie's request for DVRO is baseless, meritless, and unnecessary, I request the court deny her request for attorney fees and instead order her to pay my attorney fees and costs associated with the having to defend myself against her completely false allegations. Katie and Sebastian have no reason to fear me. I've never harmed, harassed, or threatened them. Katie's request for DVRO is simply a tactic she is using to try to get me kicked out of the marital residence and cease my contact with our son. I respectfully request the court dismiss her request in full. I also request the court order Katie to pay my reasonable attorney fees to defend against her false allegations.